Morning, everyone. I'm Betty Love. Cindy Corritore is my co-author here, and she could not be here. She's a horse aficionado, and there was a big horse show this weekend, and so she had to go there, try to get points to get to the national show. So you're stuck with me. So I'm thinking that for a lot of us, this is kind of a good representation of what our class looks like in the worst of times. I kind of like this picture because you got a guy back there in the back left, he's reading the paper. There's a guy yawning. We got a guy and probably his girlfriend sitting talking to each other, and people are looking at books and stuff. And occasionally you see that kind of thing in your class. We would rather see something much more interactive. These are a little young for my classes I teach, but that's the kind of idea. You want it kind of messy and people talking to each other, moving around. And so I guess part of what I'm going to do today is kind of take you on my journey from teaching linear algebra like this with, actually with a chalkboard. Some of our rooms have chalkboards, some have whiteboards, but from that to, with an audience like this, to something different. And interestingly, my journey really started when I decided to teach an online section of linear algebra. And I thought about this for years, and wasn't sure how you did it, and wasn't sure that I really thought that I could do a good job at it. And so thought about it for a long time, and finally thought I'd take the plunge. And I was very conscientious. I wanted to do a really good job, and I wanted to try to replicate, which in retrospect might be a little ironic, but I wanted to try to replicate what I was doing in my class. And I, will say that I had a pretty interactive class to start with, and I think what changed from before to after when I started teaching using the flipped classroom is before I was engaging maybe 20% of the students, 20% of my students were, involved, asking questions, answering questions, that kind of thing. And then, probably 50% were not involved at all. And then maybe 20 to 30% might, perk up occasionally. And so I think with the flipped classroom, what changed was now you got 100% of the students that are actually involved, and you can really see what they're doing and see if they're learning something. So back to this, as I said, I was very conscientious. I wanted to do a good job, so I made all my own videos that included the same sorts of things I would do if I was in class. I made notes, I gave them my notes, so they had plenty of resources. And so, here's my online students. They've all got access to these resources. And then I thought, well, what the heck? I might as well let my in-class students have access to the same resources. And, thinking that, well, if somebody misses a class, they can just go watch the video or look at the notes online. Or if somebody didn't quite get what was going on in class, they could go back and review if they'd like. And so that actually worked pretty well. In fact, I think it in some ways worked too well, because then I started looking at, well, here's my online students, here's my students in class, here's my online students, here's my students in class. What am I doing that makes the students need to come to class? And And then this is kind of what happened too. I went from all these people in my class to them saying, well, all the stuff's on the web, right? So I don't really need to go to class. You know, I'd rather sleep in, or, you know, I was up till 3 playing my video game, and so I'm, you know, who wants to get up and go to class? So as I said, it really was a crisis of conscience for me to think about this question. What am I doing in class to make that time valuable for students? What can I say that I'm doing that would make it a benefit, you know, make students say, yeah, you know, going to class is really worth it. And actually, it's funny, when I got on the plane to come out here, this was as far as I'd gotten with making this talk. And I actually looked at the program and I saw this. So for his talk the other night, Mike Starbird had this little blurb: what value is added by having students in classes? And I thought, oh, right, I must be on the right track here if I'm asking the same question as Mike Starbird. So my approach to addressing this was to go to the flipped IBL type class, which I call Flibble. Just a aside here, one of the things that I can show you, if you'd like, is to use Twitter for letting students ask questions. Sometimes being able to ask a question anonymously, kind of on the fly, is a nice thing. Or it doesn't have to be anonymously, but it could be if they wanted it to be. So if you have questions and you want to see how this works, you can tweet something with a hashtag FLIBL, and I'll look at those here in a little bit. But the basic idea here was, you know, I'm sure as all you know, you use these resources outside of class. Students use them to gain basic content knowledge. So, you know, I think one of the distinctions I'll make is that, you know, a lot of times when you see people talking about the flipped classroom, they're always talking about students watching videos outside of class. Well, I didn't really care if my students watched the videos or not. What I wanted them to do was be prepared for class. So if they want to read the book, that's fine with me. If they want to go to Khan Academy, find some video there that they like, fine. I don't care. Just come to class knowing what I want you to know, or at least having attempted to learn what I want you to know. Okay, so here we're back to my class. And this is what I don't want this anymore. So it's gone away and replaced.
1 minus 4.
Negative.
Negative.
Did I write it down right?
Negative 10 plus.
Yeah, I can't see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have this big chalkboard at the front of the room, and there was also a whiteboard on another wall, and then one wall was mostly windows, and then the back wall had a smaller space that we put up a whiteboard. And so I liked, I don't know if you caught that, but at one point it kind of panned the room and you could see the desks and they're all empty because everybody's up doing something. And so that's video from my class, and I really like that because it shows the activeness of what's going on, as well as, students talking to each other and helping each other. Okay, so that's kind of my story of how I got to this point. As advertised in the abstract for the talk, this is kind of the what I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about, 2 experiences. So I have flipped my applied linear algebra class, and it's primarily, I'm in the math department. Applied linear algebra is a course that's usually math majors, computer science majors, and some engineering majors, primarily. My colleague at Creighton, which is also in Omaha, and actually we taught together at UNO years ago, she's in the business school, so she's teaching business majors, and she's teaching a course that she calls mobile app development. So they use JavaScript and back-end databases to create apps. There were 3 things I advertised I'd talk about. One of them is, how do you get students to come to class prepared? That was one of the issues that I struggled with. What I decided to do was, before class, students had to go on Blackboard and complete a daily readiness assessment, what I called them. And these were short, 3 questions. 2 of them were content related and designed to be thought-provoking. Okay, so they weren't like, what is a basis for a vector space, that they could just copy some answer out of the book. So I've got an example here. So I don't know if you can read that. It says, suppose A and B are 2 by 2 matrices and the columns of B are identical. What, if anything, does this tell you about the columns of A times B? And then on this one, I gave him a little hint. It says, if you're not sure, play around with a few matrices to see if you can discover. So they have access to, 2 by 2 matrices, not that hard, but they have Mathematica or Maple. They have many tools that they can use to play around with this. And so first 2 questions were like that. And I graded these myself, and each question was worth 2 points. So you either got 0, 1, or 2 points. So if you put anything that had anything to do with what we were talking about, you got a point. And you got 2 points even if you were wrong, but if you had some rationale to show me how you arrived at your answer. So really, I didn't want to penalize them for wrong answers. I wanted to reward them for thinking. And then question number 3 was always the same. What did you find difficult or confusing about this section? If nothing was difficult or confusing, what did you find most interesting? And so that gave them a place to basically write whatever they wanted. So some of them would say, I didn't get that part about blah, blah, blah. And this, I had one guy who, the whole semester, his response was, I did not find anything difficult or confusing. I did not find anything interesting. But I just gave him credit because basically I figured, you do something, I'm going to give you some points. So that was my approach. And for Cindy, she also gave a quiz, but she did hers first 5 minutes of class. So in her class, every student had their laptop. So first 5 minutes they spent, she opened up a quiz on their learning management system. Students had 5 minutes to do it. And the questions were relatively light. You have to be able to answer in 5 minutes. So that was our approach. There's value to these quizzes because hopefully you're forcing your students to look at the material before they come to class. But this, to me, is the real value, is that you get a little window into their brains and you see what they're struggling with or what questions they have. So you can target what you do in class to those issues. And so that we both did that. We both went over the quiz in class, and then kind of tailored our activities to address those issues. Student engagement, that was another thing I said I would talk about. This one turned out to be probably, I would say, pretty easy. In my class, we mostly do pair 2 or 3 people together solving problems at the board. We spend most of our class doing that. In recent semesters, we've gotten a classroom renovation, and so now I have tables instead of desks, and so now it's more easy to let them work together at tables. But I find that I still like having them get up, physically get up and move, and I think that maybe makes it a little harder to hide. So I still like that idea. I would also occasionally, not all the time, but sometimes I would have students talk about their solution. So we're all standing up, and I'll have somebody say, "Okay, how did you do this?" Sometimes I would do that. I would talk through it. And when somebody was stuck, sometimes I'd have them talk about, "Okay, where are you? What's wrong? Why can't you go any further? Tell everybody what your thinking is to this point." And then we usually have people jump in and say, "Oh, well, try blah, blah, blah." So I really wanted to foster the peer instruction kind of environment. As I said, I get the Twitter feed. I'll come back to that. But this Hoot feed is kind of a neat site. It aggregates Twitter tweets that have a common hashtag. I did some electronic polling using Poll Everywhere at the time. Cindy uses Socrative.com, which is kind of I think better now than Poll Everywhere. But I liked the idea of having a question, let them answer it, do the poll, and then if there was significant disagreement, then have them talk to each other. Say, "Okay, what'd you get?" And if your neighbor and you differed, then one of you needed to try to convince the other one that you were correct, or be convinced that you're not correct. So we did that. Games are great, I think. So one day, I dreamed up a game, and so I'm going to show you kind of how it works. So basically, each game piece is a vector. So what I did is I just took paper and wrote vectors, and I kind of had a little method to my madness in how I wrote them. And then I also did it for different dimensions. These are all R4. But each student would get a game piece, and and I had them on pieces of paper so they could walk around. They're big, and so there are different variations. So, for instance, organize yourselves into linearly independent sets, or organize yourselves into linearly dependent set, or organize yourself into bases for R2 or R3 or whatever. And so they were forced to actually walk around, and interact with each other. And it's interesting, one semester I was teaching one section using the flipped method and the other just a traditional method. The flipped people, this was nothing for them. They were up, walking around, talking to each other and everything. The traditional section, it was like pulling teeth just to get them to stand up. They looked at me in disbelief like, "You want us to stand up and walk around? What?" And so that was really a big, huge window into the what I had accomplished so far that semester with the flipped class versus what the traditional students think. So I did a little animation. So here's basically what they would look like. You got all of them. Everybody has a vector. And, you think, what are you going to do if you're playing this game? You're going to look at what you've got, but you're going to look around you and, try to, students kind of clump together and then see, okay, well, will this group work or not? And so this is kind of what that looked like. So, they kind of clumped. And so you can kind of see it, like, obviously down, the task was to organize yourselves into linearly independent sets of size at least 3. Because otherwise, they could just all be by themselves and game over, right? So, first of all, you see got the 2 guys down here. Well, that's not going to work. They got to do something. And then some of these need to, look and see. So if you look over that group of 4, you obviously have 2 that are multiples of each other. And so, one of them's going to say, hey, dude, we can't both be here. And then this group over here, maybe not quite obvious if they're linearly independent or not. They have to think a little bit. So they're asking, what do you think? We okay? And then down here, you got one guy going, hey, you guys are multiples of each other. This won't work. And then the 2 we're lonely. So then they iterate a little bit. Notice these guys up here that weren't sure whether they were linearly independent, they did a little row operations to convince themselves. And then, so one guy, the 1, 1, 1, 1, left that group in the upper left, went back and says, hey, how about, can I fit in with you guys? And then the one over here, you had multiples over here, they moved over. And now these are saying, oh, well, when now there's only 2 of us, we need another person. And so then we, these guys are going, hey, those 2 on the end were, hey, can we join you? And so they're like, well, I'm not sure, let's check. And these over here going, hey, there's 4 over there, we need one of those. And so these check and say, hey, we're good. We're 4 linearly independent. We're good. And then there's these 2 are going, no. We still need another person because we have to have a set of at least 3. And so what do they have to do? They have to ask that group, hey, we need one of you. And then this one's wondering, well, okay, but which one do we want? Right? We can't just pick anyone. And so these over here going, no, I can't, first guy, not me. And then the next one, I'm not sure if I could work over there or not. The last one, hey, I won't work. And then, so one says, okay, I'll go. And then, so they move a little bit, and now they're all happy because now they've organized themselves as they were supposed to. And game's over, right? So there's all sorts of ways you can play that game. In Cindy's class, remember she's teaching them to develop mobile apps. And so they're actually writing code, and she has them write, each person has their own computer to write their code, but they talk with their partner about how to do, ask questions, that sort of thing. Students are sometimes chosen to, tell everybody what they're doing. She ended up thinking, what if I had made this competition and actually had prizes for the students who come up with the best prize. So last half of the class, they spend doing a project. So this is something they come up with on their own and actually implement it. And now they actually have this is like one evening, they have a kind of a party where public's invited and students demo their apps. And they have significant prizes, like iPads and Pebble watches and things like that, which she first started out using crowdsourcing and saying, hey, you want to donate to this? This is, I'm doing this in my class. And she got enough money for, I think, 3 iPads. And so she gave well, since there's groups, I think, I'm not sure how she doled them out, but you know, that was kind of an eye-opener. It's like, wow, you know, people actually are willing to donate to things that they find are worthwhile. So put that in your pocket, something you might want to try. The most recently, 2 winners are Spot a Potty and Drunk Lock. Okay, so we're talking about college students here. And Spot a Potty is an app that so her department, actually the business school, just moved into a new building, which is quite large. And so Spot a Potty figures out where you are and tells you where the nearest bathroom is. And it also has some other little features in it. There's, let's see, there was the shy bladder version, which will play music while you're in the bathroom, and there was the can't go bladder version, which would play water sounds while you're in the bathroom, and then there's the board version, which will bring up the campus newspaper so you can read it. Okay, so that's what students can come up with if you just turn them loose. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I thought it was pretty funny. Drunk Lock is an app that keeps you from texting stupid things when you're drunk. And so how does that work? You have to solve math problems before you can get into your text app. So I guess what I would really like to highlight there is, you know, these students thought this up themselves, so they're invested in it, you know, and so really, who cares, you know, within some bounds, who cares what they're actually creating in their app? You know, they're learning, and they're happy about what they're doing, and that's to me the whole point. Okay. Another thing I said I would talk about was selling. You know, do you sell this whole idea of the flipped classroom to your students? And so to market or not to market. I think that I will say that in the beginning I thought this was very important, and I made a big deal about this with my classes. Now, 3 or so years into doing this, I really don't do much of it at all. So I think maybe it has to do with your confidence level in what you're doing, your comfort level in what you're doing. And interestingly, Cindy feels the exact same way, and we've kind of been doing this about the same time frame. I think, you know, the first time I did this, I was unsure about what I was doing. Wasn't sure how to do it. You know, I was feeling my way, and my students knew that I was not very confident in how I was teaching, you know, or how I was running this class, because it was an experiment. And so, you know, it's kind of like if you show a little crack in your armor, students want to, you know, get in there and make it wider. So now I just pretend that, you know, why wouldn't you teach this way? And, you know, I don't entertain, I don't really, you know, I don't try to sell it. It's just a matter of fact, this is the way I teach. And now at my school, at least in linear algebra, they have other options. If they want a traditional course, they can go somewhere else. Okay, is that my cue? Okay. So, my advice, you may know what that means. Your mileage may vary. Okay, so really this is, you know, I don't think there's a blanket answer on this. It's what you feel comfortable with and what works for you. Okay, so words of advice. I won't go through all these, but basically it's don't get so ingrained in, I'm going to do it this way, and this is the way it has to be, and I don't want to change because this is what I said I was going to do, kind of thing. Be flexible. Be willing to listen to your students, and if they have some good suggestions about how you might change things, listen to them. Do it if you think it makes sense. If you don't think it makes sense, don't do it. Let's see. So be flexible. That's kind of, and the first one, trust yourself and your instincts. Then down at the bottom, more, make sure you're talking to your department chair. Because there's some likelihood that you have students complain. And so you need some support. And so I did this. I'm like telling my chair, this is what I'm doing. If students come to you and complain, ask them first if they've talked to me. And if they haven't, please tell them to do that first. And then if they still want to complain, okay. Let's see. And that next to the last one, you might see a downturn in your course evaluations. I really didn't, but I think a lot of people have. So that's not the end of the world. Although if you're not tenured, you might want to rethink that. But it's a possibility. And then one more. These are also pictures of my class. So in Omaha, Nebraska, when you get a sunny day in the spring, being outside is very liberating. So we actually went outside with sidewalk chalk, and they wrote on the sidewalks, wrote on the side of the buildings. And that's really my major piece of advice there. Have fun. Your students want to have fun. You want to have fun. So relax and enjoy it. You're all teachers because you want to teach, I assume. So enjoy the process. And then here's some. So that's what one student wrote that. Dr. Love was here. And then we had this also. So this was on the main walkway through campus. So that was on there till it rained. So great advertisement for your math classes there. All right, that's all I have. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Perry Lee from Kutztown, University of Pennsylvania. I have several questions. I'm sorry to monopolize the situation. You said that you had taught applied linear algebra online, fully online, right? Then you did this flipped IBL. Were there, in terms of class performance, okay, obviously you can't really do a very good statistical analysis, but did you see any differences in terms of student performance?
Well, that's a very interesting question. We actually did collect data one semester. One semester I actually taught all three versions.
Oh, the traditional as well, right?
Traditional, flipped, and online.
Yes.
And for the most part, couldn't tell any difference. For the most part. I think, I was really surprised at that because now that kind of like shoots down my whole argument of, why do flip? Because, why not just let everybody do the online class? But I think, and I've also done it in subsequent semesters, but I haven't analyzed the data quite so rigorously. One thing that I think makes a difference is that students taking online courses now, at least at my university, for the most part, know what they're getting into. And I kind of read them the Riot Act at the very beginning, saying, if you're not self-motivated, if you're not self-disciplined, then this is not for you. So I weed out, a fair number up front. So I think that the students that I end up with in the online section, they're serious and they know what they have to do. I think you know, the flipped or the traditional, that's a kind of a different student who, you know, just likes to show up and, you know, just, you know, kind of roll along. So I guess what I would say is that, it's going to take the mic away from you. You know, so from that one semester, I can't say that there was any difference in terms of exam scores. You know, there was a little bit difference, but not statistically significant.
Hi, Betty. I'm Joyati Debnat. I'm from Winona State University, and I go to Nebraska every January with my students for the conference.
Oh,
So
okay.
I might see you there now that I know who you are. I absolutely loved your presentation, and especially the way you presented, very laid back, and that's what we want in our instructors too. And you had a good number of advice, and I do a flipped class with IBL. I used to do only IBL. Only last semester I tried IBL flipped in my pre-calculus class. And it worked really, really well. And students, if the students are not up to, like you said, students will drop way ahead of time. And the students, they stay, they really score well, A through C. I have hardly any D's and F's and no F's at all, because you're constantly making sure and they know what
Yes.
they should know. So my question to you was, what level of this linear algebra is? Is it
Sophomore.
Okay, yeah,
Sophomore
that's
level.
the only question I had. So we had very little time. So thank you so much.
Thank you.